Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And today we are definitely talking something big. We talking Generation Z. And it's a young brother in and throughout Detroit that's been putting in a lot of work when it comes to community development, whether it be mentorship, gardening, learning, connecting with younger people than him. And it's like, yo, man, where does inspiration come from? So we've crossed paths over a good period of time. And he's someone that definitely should be a friend of you as well as he's a friend of our community. Mr. Jerjuan Howard, how are you today?
Man, I'm good, bro. Good to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So these Detroit is Different stories usually start with that Detroit origin, right? So I'm definitely being your senior now. It's like, man, you've been putting in so much work just from like other sessions where we've talked and rapped and everything. Yeah. So I was really looking forward to this just to get to this question. Your roots, man, your background. How deep do y'all go to the D? Are you like first, second, third generation? When did your family get to the D?
So third generation.
Okay.
So my great grandparents is as far as back as I know.
Okay.
From Columbus, Georgia.
Columbus, Georgia. Okay, now that's a town in Georgia I actually do know. You ever been down there?
Bro, so crazy enough, I was in the military for 6 years.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't know my family was from Columbus, Georgia, but I was based in Fort Benning for my basic training and all that. And I learned maybe 2 years ago that that's where the family was from. So I lived in the same exact city where the plantation was and everything. And I just learned that 2 years ago. So I used to live there.
Wow. And you just, nobody like looked at your head like, you may be one of them. I've seen this face before. Okay. Yeah. So from Georgia, and that's one of those strong foundations along the lines of Great Migration, Georgia to Detroit. Mm-hmm. Georgia and Alabama, I would say, are probably like the leading black folks is from Georgia or Alabama. Yeah. So with those ties, where did your family settle and what led them to the D?
So I believe it was the jobs. From my understanding, it was the jobs, just opportunities that was up here up north that led my great-grandmother, Jessie, to get here. And that's on my grandmother's side. But on my grandfather's side, I think it's a generation above that or older than that was in Detroit. Okay. So the house that I grew up in on Puritan and Schaefer, that area was owned by my great-grandparents since 1939.
Wow, now that's powerful. So you just introduced a couple different questions that led us down there. So PAs, Puritan Ave, and Schaefer, that's definitely, boy, that is the West Side for real. Yeah. So, and then you said since 39, and similar to this home that was purchased in the mid-40s, this was a Jewish neighborhood. Yep. And that neighborhood was definitely that
it was.
In the 30s. Mm-hmm. So that community, what was the work of your grandparents or great grandparents? What did they do? If you can recall or even have that info.
So man, I wish I would. I wish I did have more about the great grandparents. So I'm not sure what they did, but my grandfather went on to the military, Vietnam War. Then he worked at the plants and whatnot. And that was his, that was his bread and butter. That was his life.
What did he serve? Did he serve Army?
It was Marines.
Oh, he was a Marine.
Yep.
Okay, now that's even a different arc into this whole thing. So now let's unpack your parents. What did they do? What was their flow?
Yeah, so my mom worked at O'Reilly's most of my life, right there on Schaefer and in between 6 Mile and Puritan. Okay. That was the only job my mom ever had.
Wow.
And my step-pops, who essentially raised me, he worked at Chrysler. So very Detroit, you know what I'm saying? Just like that was the household that I grew up in addition to like my grandparents and everybody else that lived right down the street. So the house I mentioned from 1939, we lived in there with my grandparents. My mom met my stepfather, Charles, who lived right down the street. And so, like, I lived on that whole block literally pretty much my whole life.
So let's talk a little bit about that neighborhood because that's usually where we venture into. Puritan and Schaefer, like I say, those are like staunch Detroit communities. And also when I think of that connection between your mom and stepdad, it's like one working at the plant, one working at the place where you get the parts and stuff.
Yeah.
That's like a Detroit story if it ever did exist. But but that neighborhood, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's certain things that just like stand out, like you hear and you think immediately. Like when I think, you know, when people say like I don't know, like what's like Van Dyke and 7 Mile. It's like that's East Side.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, Schaefer and Puritan, both of them are West Side streets too. Like, so this is like, that's West Side, West Side. You know what I'm saying? Meaning like that don't even go east. Those are two streets where you would be straight up West Side. And if I'm correct, in that neighborhood, you kind of had the option, like back in my day when I was, when there was more high schools, that like if you a kid, you kind of got options of like some of those kids went to Cooley, some went to Mumford, some went to Redford, some it would mix up of where people went.
And DePorres used to be right there on Grove. You know, you familiar with DePorres? Yeah, right there on Grove and Littlefield, which is like a block over from Cheyenne, the block I grew up on. So it was options. It was options for sure.
Mm-hmm. But then if you tested it in Renaissance, it's not that far. So it's like one of those neighborhoods.
That's where I went. I went to Renaissance.
Okay. All right. So we definitely want to talk about the Phoenix.
Yeah.
So what do you remember about that neighborhood as a kid?
Man, so it was close knit. It was close knit. Maybe just due to like my family's background and that foundation being there for so long. You know, we knew everybody. The principals at John R. King Elementary, which was right there, is now Cornerstone, but that was the DPS school that was right there across the field. I went there literally my whole life, from preschool to 8th grade. I went to 2 schools, John R. King and Renaissance. But that was in that community. It was a nice mix of kids, elders. Of course, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It was still that. It still was Puritan and Schaefer.
Yeah.
But it was close-knit enough where everybody kind of looked out and knew each other enough to really wrap their arms around the kids and the generation that was coming up. And so I had, vivid memories from sun up to sundown hooping.
Okay.
Just like, and like I said, it just kind of gave me a sense of like real life community. Everybody I saw was black and doing something productive that I could aspire to be a little bit. You feel me?
Okay. Now you mentioned my favorite sport. So I don't even know, in that neighborhood, what was like the official court over there? Like,
so right there, so across the street from on Littlefield and Grove.
Okay.
Wait, you talking about basketball, right?
Yeah.
Littlefield and Grove. It was the court, what we called it.
Okay.
Yeah, and like that's where everybody would go to hoop, right there.
Okay. So it's not like, because like over here, you know, obviously the court off like Homer and Livernois, I would say is like the most known basketball court over here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, a very what do I want to say? Like we always say, it's a lot of fresh out dudes that hoop there. So like, it's a physical basketball game. Let's put it like that.
That's how the court was on Littlefield for sure. Like, you know what I'm saying? It made you tough. If you was hooping there, you was gonna be hooping.
I mean, the playing pickup basketball has completely changed in the Steph Curry era, because like dudes will get a rebound and then go shoot a 3, but that was not the. That was not the
No.
That wasn't there. So this neighborhood, brothers and sisters.
Yep. So I have a big brother and a little sister.
Okay.
And my big brother, he's gonna turn 30 next year.
Okay.
My little sister turned 18.
Okay. So like you right there in the pocket of the mix of that.
Yep.
And I guess with that you get to see a couple different things from different angles.
Yeah.
And then also having a big brother that's like that, I assume like when it comes to athletics and stuff like that, just by wanting to hang around, you were probably not as good as your brother.
No, I was
better than. Oh, here we go.
I mean, because I don't want bro to hear this and think he got one up on me. Like, he don't.
But usually, like, because if you the younger brother that play with older brothers, you come back to play with everybody your age and you killing because.
Yep, real talk. That's how it was. That's exactly how it was. A lot of my big brother, they friends like them, like my big brothers too. We used to always hoop with. We had a court, like not a full blown court, but our backyard was like cement. So we had a rim back there, and when the court was slapping too hard, everybody come to our backyard and hoop. So like literally, I'm still cool with a lot of my childhood friends that grew up on that block with me that used to hoop and everything.
And I love basketball for a lot of reasons. But I also was the kid with the hoop in the backyard, and you don't think about it like this, but it does create community in a lot of ways, but it also is that analogy, like I say, when you playing in somebody else's backyard, they be like, that's out of bounds, that's dot, that's shots, that's that. You know what I'm saying? You be like, man, what's going on? But hence, it's your court. But what was the community that you had, like, just playing basketball? Because I recognize it now as I do this work of, like, this brings in, like, so much other, like, organization. You know,
man, no, like I said, a lot of my childhood friends is still, you know, I met them on the court, like, and that was something that spiraled off to something completely different outside of basketball. You feel me? A brotherhood, and like through organizations that they run now, it really was like that focal meeting point where we was able to, of course, basketball is what we was doing, but it spiraled off to something completely different. You know what I'm saying? For a community, it's a good space to meet like-minded individuals in age and background and where y'all live at. That is all in one space if y'all hooping together.
All right, so now I got to ask the other angle of that too, because it's a couple of them over there. Where was your barbershop growing up?
So my barbershop growing up was right there on 6 Mile in Littlefield. I think it's called Crispy Cuts. But a guy named Chris used to cut my hair as a kid. Like, he used to give me the fade with the part. But right there on 6 Mile, literally another block or two away from where I grew up at. So everything was central. You know what I'm saying? Everything was really central. And like I got family on the east side and everywhere else where I was still around, but it was real life, a community that was right there.
Connected.
Yeah.
All right. So you said that school as a kid, and Flicks ain't that far from there and all of that stuff. What was that transition over to Renaissance? Because Renaissance is a school you test into. We have so many people that talk so much about Cass, and we love CT here. You know, even as a Northwestern, usually I'm talking trash, but love CT. It's a heck of an asset. But in that same realm of like a school of choice, a school that pours into two students, Renaissance exists, the Phoenix.
It was a transition. So that first school, so John R. King ended up moving. It still was John R. King, but back in what was that, 2010 or some autumn schools was closing down and whatnot? Yeah, so John R. King moved to where Cerveny is at, which is Puritan and Strathmore.
Yeah,
so,
a whole different neighborhood.
Yeah, yep. So that's where I ended up going to, like, technically my middle school, but it still took on the name of John R. King. We just moved locations. So me and all my friends, like, that's Puritan and Strathmore. All my friends, we hooped and stuff. They was all going to Henry Ford, Oak Park, for other schools, and I wanted to go there too. But once I tested into Renaissance, my mom was like, "No, you going to Renaissance," and it was an adjustment for real. I love Renaissance. Like I said, it taught me a lot of different things, but elitist isn't the right word to use for Renaissance. But it was an adjustment for me coming from that neighborhood where I came from. And it wasn't like a lot of people that came from them neighborhoods that was going to Renaissance, you feel me?
Yeah.
So it was an adjustment for sure, because, like, again, all my friends, and I was the sole person from my school. It was another young lady that went there, but I ain't go to Renaissance with, like, all my guys that I grew up with in the neighborhood for all them years. So it was an adjustment, but I'm grateful that my mama did make me go there, because it did kind of, I think, prepare me for other steps. And the academic thing, you know, of course, that speaks for itself, but just the rigorous workload of it, and just time management skills, and introduced me to debate as well with Miss Pamela Norris, and that's what I do now. So it all happened in the way it was supposed to at the end.
So because similar, like in that same transition, I remember I finished at Northwestern, like a lot of people I'm sure started at Renaissance and finished at like their neighborhood school. But when I started at King, like the first day of school, it was so much like anxiety, and I didn't even think about it. Like, I walk in the lunchroom and I see, and the lunchroom seemed like huge. It seemed like a stadium or something. And then it's like, damn, where am I going to sit? Who do I sit next to? Like, who do you know? Like, so those people that our friends sort of knew when I was in middle school at Halley, I could sit next to. You didn't even necessarily have that connection. You just walking in there like,
what's up? Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And a lot of kids, again, didn't come from John R. King, but they came from, like, Bates. So, like, everybody had, like, Bates or
their
Lexington.
connection.
Yeah, everybody was kind of already typed in, but it ended up being cool. Like, Renaissance, and like I said, ended up working out, but it for sure was an adjustment that first semester of my 9th grade year. But it ended up working out smoothly.
Yeah, and shout out to one of the people from Northwestern that's there at Renaissance now. But Miss Highsaw was
Oh
always.
wow, she the debate coach at Renaissance, and we're gonna be working together through Umoja Debate League.
Oh, that's what's up.
Crazy.
Well, tell Miss Highsaw I said what up.
I got you.
But yeah, Miss Highsaw's there, and so many others. But in that same journey, and you said you served in the military too. So from Renaissance, where do you go?
So straight to the military, 10 days after graduation.
Were you in ROTC or were you what was the thing that said, okay, I'm gonna take this option in military?
Yeah, so I did have ROTC, but I hated it. So I got out of it my freshman year.
Okay.
It's crazy I ended up joining the military for real. But I wanted to be a lawyer. This around the time with the Trayvon Martin, and I seen this lot of injustice. I guess kind of like a consciousness kind of woke up for me when I was in high school. So I wanted to be a lawyer that helped black people in the justice system. That was my goal. My family ain't have money for law school. You know what I'm saying? Recruiter came in. We paid for school, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, right? That's the way a means to an end essentially was in my mind. It was literally a vehicle to get me from not being able to pay for college to pay for college and fulfilling my dreams.
And it's a lot of people that I think, a lot of the soldiers that enlist are either looking for college or looking for money or space to be on their own. The incentive of patriotism ain't what it used to be. I'm gonna say that as even this house, like I often say, my grandfather, John Brown, Sergeant John Brown, served in the Army, and his perspective of a lot of what he dealt with in the military, still with those same vestiges of racism and so many other things. Yep. It's just tough. So what branch did you serve?
So mine was Army. Army.
So you actually went through Army and you went through basic training down in Georgia, and that's tough, man. That's tough.
So basic training. So like I said, June 10th, I believe, was my graduation date from Renaissance. June 20th, I was on the plane to Georgia to start basic training. So whole summer of 2016, it was tough for sure. It was hot.
Yeah.
More so it was mental. The physical stuff, you gonna get in shape. Like they gonna work you gonna get in shape. But it was more so the mental, kind of like the constant like irritation and mental fatigue and tiredness and like missing family and all. You know what I'm saying? That was my first time really being away from family. And we ain't had no phones. I was writing letters. So that was for 10 weeks. As an 18-year-old, you know what I'm saying? It was a mental adjustment, more so like mentally strong and just keep persevering. I always tried to keep like the end goal in mind as I was doing it. It's like, this is just a means to pay for your college. You can be set. Like, just keep going one day at a time. So mentally, I think it was the most, it's for sure not the most challenging thing I've been through, but at the time it was.
So there in that space, you get past basic training. What's your journey in military?
Yep. So I'm an IT specialist. So information technology specialist. Following that 10 weeks of basic training, you go to something called AIT, Advanced Individual Training. It's a job for everything in the military, from people that cook the food to drive the trucks, people that fuel the trucks, all that. My job was IT. So configuring routers, switches, networking, all that type of stuff. That's what I did. So following that 10 weeks at Fort Benning, I went to Fort Gordon, which is also in Georgia, but Augusta, Georgia. And there, again, I think it was 21 weeks I had to learn of all like the computer stuff. Following that, I returned back home to Detroit, where I only do one weekend a month through the National Guard. So I wasn't like active duty, had to stay on the base no more. After my training, it was just reporting one weekend a month. And that was in Taylor, Michigan. So that's how I still was able to pursue my degree and everything while still maintaining that military status.
So you come back, and what school do you choose?
So I chose Western. So initially I chose Bowling Green. I wanted to go to Howard. Like that's my first choice, real talk. But with me being the Army National Guard of Michigan, I had to stay within Michigan for them to pay for my school. So Howard was first. Bowling Green was next. I was gonna study criminal justice. Remember, that was law. Bowling Green had a really good one. They like, no, it's in Ohio. So I'm like, I was next. Western Michigan. I had a couple friends that went there. They had a pretty good criminal justice program, and that was the school that I chose. And I was glad I did, because a lot more, I guess, character development, if you want to call it, took place once I stepped foot on Western's campus.
Western's campus. Because, Western Michigan really does mean Western Michigan. And just out there, like, I think oftentimes when you from the D, we think of Michigan as in Detroit. Yeah. In reality, Detroit is such something so different than most of the rest of the state is shocking. I was a truck driver at one point in time. Hence, I've traveled a lot of nooks and crannies of the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And, that's why a lot of stuff doesn't surprise me about the state of Michigan. That's as surprising as some Detroiters.
Yeah.
But what was it like being on that west side of the state?
So I will say this about Western. I don't know if it's changed since then, but Kalamazoo and Western almost operate as like two separate entities. Kind of how like Wayne State and Detroit does. Like it's not like a very like university in the city in which it sits in isn't very like collaborative and stuff like that. Yeah. So really, like I was on campus.
So you just stayed on campus. You didn't even venture off.
Not like my first year and a half, 2 years for real at Western. It was like my second, third year where I was like, oh no, like let's go ahead and hit the city, like see what's going on. Yeah. But it's also Kalamazoo too, like ain't a whole lot going on.
Yeah.
But get on the campus. For sure, it's a PWI. It was a white university, but I was kind of surprised by how close knit the black community was at Western. Like the black community at Western is pretty close knit and tight. Like classrooms you're gonna see all white folks, but any other thing like you could find a community of black folks at Western. You know what I'm saying? Who might have your same major, might be into what you into, whatever the case may be. I was surprised with it, Western being that white, how close knit the black community really was. And that kind of led me down the path of the Black Student Union and become the president of that.
So, president of the Black Student Union, what led for you to run? What was the key issue? Why did you just not want to be, a person that show up to an event here or there? What was the thing that sparked you to be?
So at first I was just a person that was just showing up to the events. Good friend of mine, Alexis Daniels, she was the vice president, or I forgot her position at the time. But I was just helping her carry her groceries up to her dorm. She's like, come to a meeting. I didn't know anything about it. And I went, and the brother name was Khalil Mazi, who was the president. And I had never seen, like, someone that young, like, understand the things he understood and was able to articulate it, like, our issues, not just on campus as, like, a microcosm, but black people, not just even nationally, but internationally. And it was like he was really spitting some knowledge and some game and some solutions. And I feel like he was talking to me in that meeting. So him and I ended up developing like a mentor-mentee thing. I ended up becoming a diversity, equity, inclusion chair, which is like a pre-president thing at the university, at the Black Student Union. And he kind of like appointed me to be the next president and kind of like molded me like that. I didn't necessarily like fish or like go for that position or like really run for it. I just was kind of consistent and helping out where I could and pulling data and statistics in regards to the status of black people on that campus and things like that, just adding value where I saw fit. And that kind of led me into, meeting with the president of university and trying to like really advocate for certain things, and that kind of led to the presidency thing. But it wasn't like something I was like gunning for,
So how old are you at this time? And how is this shaping your thoughts on organizing, being able to change some realities for you and others' quality of life?
So important that I was 20 at the time. What was that? That was 2018-ish, maybe 2017-ish. But I was 20 years old at the time. And again, being a part of something where it was like with like-minded individuals, like with a very strategic goal about how we get there, and everybody plays a different role, that sets something off my brain. Like with the right amount of organizing, anything could be done. Like literally anything could be done essentially, with the right pieces and the right power behind those pieces that's making stuff happen. So again, I'm 20 years old, but that kind of gave me a whole perspective. Some of the key things that we were going after was why, like just question I began to ask, like retention rates for black college students. Why are they the lowest amongst any race on university campus? Graduation rates. Why are we being academic holes at any rate higher than anybody else? Why are we being expelled at rates higher than anybody else? We pay this tuition just like everybody else, you feel me? And so that, again, those like the concrete things that we were looking to change. And we had like a direct plan of action on how we could get there for a variety of different approaches. But that, again, it set off my mind to really like think and really notice like what real power looks like when you organize it the right way, you feel me? And that kind of shaped a lot of what I do now. You know what I'm saying? That was like the origin of it.
Okay, so as you're doing that, what are you reading? What are you studying? Like, how are you getting more game? Are you connecting more so with people like the griots? Like, how are you getting? Okay, this is a method that I think would be effective of working.
Man, reading. Khalil Mazi gave me a book, and Khalil, that's my bro. Like real life, a good mentor. My bro from Chicago, Detroit, Chicago, always linking up like that.
Yeah.
But The Miseducation of the Negro.
Carter G. Woodson.
Yep, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And to me, I'm reading Garvey, like his ideas versus Du Bois' ideas, and really understanding, Malcolm X ideas, and just like really diving into history. I think that stage taught me that any leader must be a historian. Like, it's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you're gonna be a leader, you have to really like have a deep understanding of what got whatever you're leading to that point. Whether that's a group of people, whether that's a neighborhood, whatever, you must understand the dynamics of that.
And I know you gave that 1 and 2, but let's go to 3 and possibly 4. You said that any good leader must know the history of how things got there.
Mm-hmm.
What advantages, what does a leader possess when they do have that better understanding of history and the dynamics of how circumstances of today were impacted by realities of yesterday? Like, what advantage is that giving a person in a leadership position?
So it gives them, for one, a good starting point, right? Like a real life starting point. Sometimes I think we repeat actions that like have been historically shown that they don't work or they're not effective. But someone who really like studied the history, they wouldn't start there. They would start with something new or fresh or build on that, not like constantly reinventing the wheel. So for one, it saves time, energy, and resources. Like the people that people are trying to lead, like attention spans is everywhere. If you can be very clear and precise, like this is where we're starting and why, that puts you at an advantage to really take, a mission further of where it's supposed to go. So for one, like I said, it saves time, energy, and resources. And then secondly, when you have an understanding of how we got to this point, you just literally have, I don't know how else to put it, you just have a better idea of where we're going with it and why, and literally why. Because you can pull something from all the people of the past. It might not be one set solution that a leader in the past had, but the combination of all those different things gives you an agenda, a plan of action, and everything else to move forward in just an effective way, an efficient way.
So now let's talk about after college. Where are you at in your journey? What's the play? What are you doing? I'm guessing military service wrapping up, completed.
Yep.
College, you're done on campus. What's your plan?
Yep. So it's 2020. So 2020, December 2020 is when I graduated from college.
Wow, it's almost like right after
the
world stopped.
Yeah. So literally when the world stopped, for real though.
Really,
so, the pandemic started in March 2020. And I used to give these lectures as the Black Student Union president, Black economics, Black history, all those different things, educating the Black student body at Western about these different topics. And I was just sitting on that content because I would be preparing for this stuff months ahead once the world shut down. It's like, I want to do with this. So as a form of self-expression, just was writing essays and, just letting off some steam essentially on paper. And I looked up like a couple essays, like, this might be a chapter of a book. And mine, just during the pandemic, we got nothing better to do. So I started writing my book, A Message to Black College Students. So that book was released in December 2020, the same day I graduated from Western Michigan University.
Okay.
And so
say that again. Message to Black college students.
A message to Black college students.
A message to Black college students, which I'm going to unpack a little bit more about that because, we have the historic Message to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
You also have Message to the Millennial through Brother Reza Islam in the Nation of Islam. So now you have a message to the Black college student.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I want to unpack that. But where can people buy that first?
So Black-owned bookstores in the city first, Pillar and Pride, neighborhood grocery on the east side of Raphael, right spot.
Okay.
And then as well as, everywhere else, Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
Like all those other platforms. But if you're in Detroit, go to Pillar and Pride on 7 Mile and Woodward or 500 Manistee if you're on the east side at neighborhood grocery.
Would you say that book is for people that are in college or people about to go to college? Who is that most effective?
I think it's honestly for everybody, right? So before I was going to title that book before it was going to be a message to Black college students. It was going to be titled "The Illusion of Progress." That was going to be the title of it. But at the state I was in, I was really directing the message towards Black college students. But the principles and stuff like that I talk about in there can be, understood and, used, I guess, even for lack of better words, by anybody. A college graduate, somebody that's preparing to go into there, somebody that's actively in there.
Okay. All right. So now let's just get back into that process. So you release the book and you graduate same day.
Yep, same day. And it was my 23rd birthday as well.
That's powerful, man. There you go.
Yep. So it was 3 big things happened that day. But then again, mind you, my whole process for even being in college was law school. So while I'm waiting on the world to open back up, law school is still virtually. So I ain't take my LSAT, nothing like that yet, because I'm waiting for them to lift that. I'm not doing law school virtually. That's just I'm not about to do it. It's too rigorous. It don't make sense. So I'm waiting on them to just announce that. So I'm waiting months and months. They kept saying stuff's going to be open up, and it didn't. They kept pushing the timeline back. And it's upon reflection, I was like, dang, how did I get to this point where I'm able to write a book and give speeches in front of, Black Student Union and lead people in the military? Because I was a laid-back, chill, kid for the most part. And I was just tracing back, kind of self-reflecting. And I was like, man, debate in 10th grade really changed my life. And so I'm like, I wonder, how can I replicate that, what was poured into me by my Miss Pamela Norris, from my debate teacher, to more Detroit youth. And again, when I just had this free time to think, Umoja Debate League was kind of birthed. So I had my notebook in front of me and just thinking about what this would look like. What would I want the curriculum to look like? What would be the intention behind the debate team? Critical thinking, confidence in public speaking, conflict resolution skills, right? Self-expression, all those different things I want to pour into the youth. I started mapping out the organization, the blueprint of it. And so following that, after college, I started Umoja Debate League, my nonprofit. And I started with one school, teaching kids debate, John R. King middle school I went to. And that group of 7 kids turned into a group of about 20 of them. And that one school turned into Principals Talk, right? The program. I was going every day after school. They designated a little classroom to me, and I was teaching them the fundamentals of debate and public speaking. That one school, again, grew into 4 schools because Principals was talking. So then I had to hire more debate coaches to do that. And then these schools started competing against each other, forming debate league. And so now those 4 schools that we had turned into 22. So that was kind of like the formula for how Umoja Debate League was built. And that's where we at with it now. And then last year, we all been noticed, though, education is holistic. You know what I'm saying? You teach the kids something in the classroom, cool, but they go home to a community. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't really showing love to that, you know what I'm saying, it's going to be very, very hard to change that child. So, again, Puritan and Schaefer is where I grew up at. We ended up purchasing some lots from the land bank last year. And I always wanted to start a community garden because Bob Malika Keeney, a huge inspiration for that, self-determination, the whole 9, just knowing, you know what I'm saying, if you can start with people, you control them, honestly. So anyways, we bought these lots and turned into what is now Umoja Village, which features that community garden that we got, features a 24-foot stage where the kids debate on during our summer program. People have meetings there. We got art all around. We got a community tool shed. But that was also another thing that we added up under the debate team after we finally got everything up and running.
And this is where, here's another commercial inside of this. You're going to be a part of our State of Black Detroit. And that's me and Yusef. This will be the 3rd year. You were actually at
I was there.
Our State of Black Detroit last year. But this will be our 3rd year doing it. And this time we're going to have different guests to speak on things. So you're going to speak on Generation Z, or really 20-year-olds.
Yep.
Is 20 to early 30s, you know what I'm saying? Which I definitely don't necessarily think that people younger and people older have a lot of value. But that active generation, I think, is something to focus on when it comes to this type of work for many reasons. As now, me being in my 40s, it's I'm becoming I'm transition from the young people to kind of big homie or adult, you know? So, in this work, it's always we need more young people. 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 And I find myself as a person in marketing always usually advocating from the disposition of where the young people stand now about what they've seen in the arc of their journey and their life of how they even look at certain things. And I'm like, you all are coming in from the vantage point of looking at this like when you all got started in like the 70s, looking up to people in the 60s or the 80s and the 90s. Like, it's a different reality for somebody in their 20s right now to a lot of things that just have been what we think for decades, like staples in what American success and life look like.
Yeah.
So I get that long soliloquy, classic Kahry, Detroit is a different thing, to get into some deeper questions on things. So what's been your commitment to this? Because I do think just in general, people in general want to do more. But I think that the asset of time and getting value for time has been more like your generation has crystallized that more so than many.
Yeah. So what's your, so what you asked? So like, what's like the value of time and like what's my commitment to all of this and how was
so
it
like
meant
now
to
I'm
be
speaking
built?
for you, answer for you, and then I want you to kind of answer for as we're speaking to others just from a societal glance. Like, what's been your commitment to doing this type of work in community at your age? Because sometimes it's like, let me get on my own feet before I help the people, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I think you can do both. In our book, I kind of talk about this a little bit too. Sometimes it's hard for young folks to like hop into this work because they trying to buy a house, start a family. Like, it's a lot of other things that's priority to them. But for me, personally, I'm fully committed to it because I think this is my passion. I can't even run from it. You feel me?
And that's where like you can be a rarity. And sometimes I felt like that. And then I'm the only person there. And then I feel like I'm called on too much for this work because you can get burnt out from this work too.
Yeah. No, it definitely take some mental days and some whatever your self-care is for sure. That's mandatory. You feel me? Because you will get burnt out from it. But I don't know. I mean, I get fulfillment from it. Like, honestly, truthfully, I get fulfillment from, like, again, I'm in the same community building things where I grew up at. Like that's tough to me. Like, there's no other, you know what I'm saying? I don't think it's like no highest other honor than to like really pour back into something that was poured into me. You feel me? So it's a value system, I think, like that drives what people prioritize. And some people just don't value, I don't want to say they don't value community enough, but they don't value it as like top priority enough to the point where,
and that's really
like
where
they willing to make the sacrifices to make it happen. I'm willing to make those. I'm willing to, you know what I'm saying? Umoja don't pay me. Like, I don't get paid from Umoja as it currently stands for these 2 years. Yeah. Like, I had, I think, a $2K stipend. Yeah. Like, for 2 years, that's what I had, like, in total. You feel me? But I'm willing to make those sacrifices because, like, it's an investment in something that's not just for me, and it's not just monetary. You feel me? Like, the kids gonna reap these benefits, the community gonna reap these benefits, but it's all like the value system that somebody has and what they see their purpose in life kind of is. And I think we have to do a better job of it should be like a requirement, like in somebody's head. So like once you make to a certain level of success, black young folks, you have to reinvest that back into the community.
And I'm asking, and as we're speaking for like a societal lens thing, like we do that on Detroit is Different, or I like to do it, so we do it on Detroit is Different. But from that societal lens, like even when it comes to a lot of things, like ownership is looked at different from you all's generation. Like, you know, and I'm speaking from just like looking at things because you all have seen some tough, like, how old are you?
26.
So at 26, you've seen some very tough realities that even when I was 26, I didn't see. You've seen 9/11. You've seen the Iraq War. You've seen, what was that? Occupation Freedom. You've seen Afghanistan. You've seen that Great Recession that I think was a depression where basically swaths of people lost their homes.
Yep, my grandparents.
And banks didn't really deal with any consequence for that. If anything, banks were rewarded more money. You've seen people in my generation have like multiple degrees and deal with student loan debt. You've seen, you know what I'm saying? Probably like that same person, you know what I'm saying? Your older cousin with a PhD driving Uber and DoorDash. You know what I'm saying? Like,
real
so
life.
your generation's motivation for stuff is like, yo, I need to see what it will be for it to make sense. And that same commitment to community, because that community never really was pouring back into my family when we lost our house. That same community wasn't, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just giving the arguments that I've heard, and I don't have a lot of strong rebuttals other than, like, I think that if we don't come back to community, it's gonna be tough. And even just the way that, like, playing outside, like, you know, you grew up in a different community, it sounds like, but I think a lot of these kids, like, have manufactured friendships because of just, you know, kids ain't outside. They don't really know, you know, other people and stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, I guess, so my point to that, and I've heard those similar arguments as well. All right, you're not responsible for how we got here, but the next generation will hold you responsible for what's not taken care of or what's not fixed. You know what I'm saying?
I like that discussion that you just laid.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the reality of it. Like,
so with it, I like that you just went there. How do you feel a lot of, like, people in Generation Z feel about, like, let's just go one generation up, me and my homies. How do you all feel about us as millennials and what we stewarded in the opportunities that we do present? Because that's also sometimes another perspective of, like, man, these old heads don't want to get out the way. They don't want to put me on.
That's
you
what
know
I was about to say. That's what I was about to get into. That hasn't necessarily been my experience, though, because I started Umoja, like, for lack of a better, we independent. You feel me? Like, so, you know what I'm saying? We move and shake accordingly. But I have heard that argument where there's some gatekeepers in place, right, who don't want to pass the baton or who don't want to put on the other young folks. And so it causes a resentment. It causes generational, like, friction, like, generational fighting. That's, again, like, what some people experience, but that's not been my experience. Like, like, the OGs of the city, I'm here right now and talking to you, you know what I'm saying? Yusuf, you know, Raphael, I could name, Bob and Leaky, I could name a million different names of people who embrace the work that we doing. And, you know what I'm saying, however they could to connect us with the right folks to expand it. But again, that's not everybody experience my age, but that's my experience. So I mean, I think Detroit, the next generation has embraced our work, but I can't speak for everybody else.
So that's interesting that you speak to that, and I'm going, and you're going to provide more context to this when we talk for the State of Black Detroit, because it's usually always like, you know, you sit in some of these organizer meetings, they talk about young people as if it's like just like a farm with just, like, you know, 25-year-olds with cars and time on their hands to help fight for social justice and community organizing for Black people. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you know what I'm saying? As difficult as it would be to invite your granddaughter to this meeting, you think that her friends and everybody else is going to be just as easy? They got the same other, even as supportive as the action is, they got the other hustle and bustle in their life.
Yeah. And again, it's all boiled down to that value system. Like, it all just boiled down to the value system of, because, like, I'm 26. Everybody on my team, nobody's over 26. There's 5 of us, and, like, that's everything deep that you be seeing, that's us putting it on.
That's deep.
You feel me? And so, like, with the right, it's in all of our volunteers, when we hold, like, different events and whatnot, it's people my age, it's my peers. Like, hey, bro, how can I help? Like, even people who might not be typically the organizers, like, they come in and support. And so I guess it just depends on, again, like, what the mission is and how, you know, about marketing, like, how we can,
how you present and communicate the message.
Yeah, like, I'm still a 26-year-old Black man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still a 26-year-old Black man from Detroit. So I look like Detroit. I talk like Detroit.
Yeah.
My value system is still for our people. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes, like, that marketing, if you want to call it that, is what's needed to bring in more people like me, because they see themselves in the work.
And I do think that, because clearly you do move, and I'm not, you know, I'm in the mix of this, and I love my people. You know, that's what I always say, and because it's true, because it takes a propensity of something to do, of a little bit of crazy. But I feel like if I'm not going to be the one putting the Legos together in my neighborhood, who would?
No,
and
real
then
talk.
those other neighborhoods aren't really welcome for me. As much as, like, when people say, you know, I don't feel safe over here, I feel safest over here. Where everyone else feels safe is the most dangerous. Like, wouldn't nothing scare me than living in the suburbs and living right next door to like some like 30-something-year-old white woman that says I felt uncomfortable
No,
when
real
he
talk.
drove into his house next door.
Yeah.
That right there is like,
No,
I'm
that's
not
real.
saying crazy shit don't happen over here, because it happened. I mean, I'm in the hood, but I've assimilated to the culture of knowing how to adjust. It bothers me that people do the illegal dumping and then, have the discussion and all of that. Like, but you're right. As we pour more into it, I feel like we can build from some different things.
And that's the most like best part about being where we at. Like, it's almost like a canvas, a blank canvas to build whatever we want to build. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, like, not even like just speaking like in terms of like in figures and whatnot. You literally can build what you want to build, like the life you want to see for your community. Like, and who's better to do it than somebody that's from that community? You already have the history, the relatability, the credibility. Like, your hood will support you if you take that step to make it better. I don't care what nobody say. Like, one of the biggest myths is you build something, they're gonna tear it up.
Yeah,
that ain't true. That's not true. Like, that's a testament to, like, I'm on Puritan and Schaefer, like, and we done built.
Yeah,
Man, we done left stuff out there, like, and like, it's respect in that neighborhood because they understand that this is something that's gonna benefit everybody. You know what I'm saying?
This studio itself is a classic. Like, people ain't kicking in the door and stealing stuff. And I'm not saying it's above something like that, but usually as we build more, it's like if nobody's gonna do it, who would? And that's why, like, I had the pictures of Nipsey up so much because people be like, oh man, you can end up like Nipsey if you try to get back to the hood and get murdered in the hood. And I'm like, I don't necessarily, being gang related and street culture, that's a different art. But I think, as I always tell people, it's like I'm square. I know I'm square. And when I say square, meaning I am not involved in any criminal activity. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I even think, like, but I'm adjacent in the culture. So, and that's cool. And I don't mind it. And the people over here know that. So it's just like, oh man, he ain't.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm saying. And so that eliminates that excuse. So, like, any way you look at it, like, man, why you ain't building in your hood? Like, you can claim this hood for every other reason. You know what I'm saying? And like build it up, bro. Like, you have everything you need right here to be an asset to your community.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit as we get closer to the end. In building that team and in that work, you personally, what impact has that had on, like, all your, like, family relationships, your friendships, even, like, dating and stuff like that? What has it had as you do more of this community work and organizing for the people around you?
It becomes, so for me first, I think it becomes like a part of my personality in a way. Like, real talk, like, I got friends. Like, are we really friends if we ain't on the same type of time? Like, I ain't saying you got to be like front line with me with all this stuff, but like, if you ain't like if you, okay, I ain't saying you got to progress the black community, even though you should, but if, like, you add in, like, destruction to it, we can't be cool, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because, like, the more and more I kind of get into this, which I truly feel like the purpose of my life, it ain't aligned no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't kick it the same way we used to because I don't respect how you move.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So in that aspect, that's like with friendships, relationships, but even like with the family, like, the family love me enough to, like, they are taking on to support however they can and things like that. But I think it just becomes more part of, like, my personality and who I am as a man. And it kind of like a requirement that I have of those is going to be in close proximity to me.
And so, because, like, like, family is always one of those unique things because they've known you your whole life. And you're going to have that relationship with them. And they may move differently. You know what I'm saying? You may have that family member that, I don't know, like, what would be a wild take against, something. Like, you may have that family member that's like, look, you know what I'm saying? If them people can get jobs and they got to tear down all them people's houses in that neighborhood, hey, you got to get money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that may be on that time, but you still have some semblance of sharing space.
Yeah. So even like with family, I don't got no family that's like that, that's on that type of time, but, like, I'm not naive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand that everybody gain a level of consciousness at their own pace. Yeah, you feel me? Their own timeline. And so nobody rushed it. Nobody rushed mine. Nobody was like, Hunt, read this while you in high school. Do X, Y, and Z. I mean, they suggested, but they ain't cut me off if I wasn't on the type of time that they was on. You know what I'm saying? So I don't do the same thing to, like, my family or friends necessarily, but But like I said, I think after a while, as this kind of like becomes more and more like, all right, bro, you see like what's happening around the community. Like, don't like knowingly, you know what I'm saying? Because I guess if like you don't know what's happening to you, or like you don't know the destruction that you're doing.
Yeah. Ignorance and stupidity are two totally different things.
You feel me?
Ignorance is not knowing. Stupid is doing it and know you doing it.
Yeah. So like, I guess like ignorance is tolerable. You know what I'm saying? Like, and try to lead them in the right direction, whatever the case may be, or not even me leading them. Like, let them find their own way. Suggest certain piece of literature they should read. The same journey that I had to go on myself. But stupidity is, like you said, something different where I can't respect
Inexcusable.
it. Yeah, and it's very, very hard for me to like interact or act like I'm cool with somebody that I don't really respect. You know what I'm saying? Like it's extremely difficult for me to do that. Friends, family, like, or whoever. You feel me?
That's interesting that you bring that up, because that naturally leads, as I know you've done working in this space, politics. It's a lot of politicians that it's hard to have respect for them, but they're part of this ecosystem of community. How does that engagement? What's the balance? And I'm not even speaking of any person in particular. I'm not even speaking of any level in particular. I'm just speaking from a general.
Yeah. So I'm also strategic too, right? And so again, like having like this history of things like that, and with the end goal in sight, some positions have to be used. There has to be some level of interaction, right?
Yeah.
Not compromising by no means.
Yeah.
What we standing on and what we believe in for our communities and for our people. But with the case of politicians, they might not be like standing up pro-black with you, whatever the case may be, but some type of interaction where you still, they have an understanding of the obligation they have to our communities. And that's our relationship with them, is literally to like make sure that they do X, Y, and Z for the betterment of the kids and whatever the case may be. Then I'm able to still be okay with those type of interactions with them. But it's still, even those are very
It can
strategic.
be tough. You're still learning the process.
Yeah. Like still learning the process of it, and leaning on really some of the elders in the community to kind of like guide me on how to interact with some of these folks, because just like we have an agenda to how to move the community forward, they have an agenda for somebody that's young, black, like young, black, and token. Like, and this ain't none of that over here.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's strategic, and just making sure that like you still, not compromising on what you stand on.
All right, and then the last question before I get into the last question is debate. You said debate meant so much to you, and I don't know if people understand. And then that definitely is in that arc of legality and learning justice, because a debate is what they call an argument, not like an argument how we've turned argument into like the common use of slang where like people shouting back and forth with each other, but like an argument like, water is the best thing that people should have in them as substance, and then then you debate whether it could be
like it's
other vitamins and things like that. Why did debate impact you so much, and what impact are you seeing that have on some of your students?
Facts. So I like to call debate disguised learning. That's what it was for me. So it was disguised learning. Like I learned how to like literally get what somebody's saying, like the message they're trying to convey, and break it down in my head very, very quickly. Like very, very quick. And that's a skill. Sometimes people have to articulate stuff a long time. I learned how to articulate my thoughts, in a way where any audience, I know my audience a lot better now, and how they could receive that message, so I can deliver it in a way in which, it makes sense and it's digestible. So from my articulation that it gave me, the confidence that it gave me to really stand in front of somebody and say, I disagree with you for these reasons. This is why my argument is superior to yours. That's something to have. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are really terrified of public speaking.
Yeah.
Like, debate gave me that confidence. So the articulation, the confidence, the essentially just like leadership building skills that it poured into me. You know what I'm saying? And again, being able to, it's like chess almost. Like, I'm already probably knowing what somebody gonna say before they say it.
Yeah.
Based off the research of the topic that we did. You know what I'm saying? So it just, again, sharpened my mind in a way to think quick on my feet and be confident enough to understand the opposition. Also, too, it gave me an idea, not even an idea, but just an understanding of putting myself in somebody else's shoes. So, like, when it teach you how to know your enemy in a way.
Yeah, I think that I'm glad you got to that point, because I do that often, where I try to look at it from, if I was in their position, how would I approach this?
Yep.
And one of the
translates
toughest
to
things
so many different
to do,
areas of life.
Yeah. Especially being black, thinking to yourself like, okay, if I was in this position of from the white dynamic, how would I even see this?
Yeah.
Because then you start paying more attention to being like, yo, if you was in the white dynamic, you wouldn't even know none of this exists at all. You know? And that's what's so eye-opening about a lot of things in America, but definitely, I think that, that strengthens that critical thinking skill. And,
it was dope.
And that's great that you got that going for the little homies.
Yeah, you feel me? Like I said, it's disguised. I didn't even know that I had those skills when I graduated from Renaissance until I started looking back like, how did I
develop it?
Yeah, through self-awareness, self-reflection. It's like, and I could pinpoint exact moments almost in my life where like I got that added to my toolbox, for lack of better words. You feel me? And so I want to be able to do that for the other ones because I know how important that is. Malcolm spoke about debate in his book, right? He said it was his baptism of public speaking while he was in prison. Like, and I started looking at other leaders that took debate. It's a mental exercise that I think is unmatched. I don't know another exercise that does like the robust amount of benefits that it pour into a person. I can't think nothing else besides debate that does that. And that's why I started it. I love debate, but it's more so a vehicle to get the kids from point A to point B and create a pipeline of leaders that our community needs who thinking about these things critically. We make our own curriculum. So like a lot of topics and stuff we discuss be relevant, not only like culturally relevant, but community relevant. We're talking about stuff that's happening in their communities, educating them on that and letting them decide like and ask the questions, become curious and articulate what they'd like to see or how they would do things if they're in positions of power. Because it gives them that mindset early on. Okay, bet when I get there, like now I'm striving to get to change the things that I see, or I can change them right now through the right methods and, you know what I'm saying, procedures and whatever. So it's all strategic and intentional with how we do what we do.
Definitely. So I'll close with this. What's your favorite adjective?
Dang. Favorite adjective? To describe like exactly what though?
It's an open-ended question.
Man, I don't know. I don't want to say nothing too basic, but I'm trying to think.
It may be like that.
Yeah.
Then you get to give the context. See, just like what you said, public speaking.
Good vocabulary. My favorite adjective, I don't know. Smart.
Break it down.
I like that because I think it has it could take on many different things, right? There's different types of smart. Street smart, book smart, culturally smart. I think it just takes on many different meanings, and it's just a word that can apply to many different areas of life. And I think everybody is smart in their own way. So I like the word. It's in its meaning.
Yeah, true. That's also one of those adjectives after the age of half the middle school, you rarely probably gonna hear that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Real talk.
High school and college, you may hear it a little bit in there.
Yeah.
And it's weird. That's one of those adjectives I actually reject when people be like, "You're a smart guy," and I'll be like, I don't know. I guess I got a high arc of you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? What that is. It's like I think I synthesizing information the right way.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Powerful. Thank you so much.
Man, thank you for having me.
All right. Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.